On the bench today, we've got two similar but different pedals. We're going to understand the difference, we're going to do some mods, and we're going to do some tone tests. These are the two classic Overdrive pedals, TS9, SD-1. So this is an anniversary edition, so it's in this red case, but they're similar, but they're not similar. So this one has an asymmetrical clipper. The tone is slightly different, and this one is symmetrical clipper, and again with a slightly different tone, but also between the two, this one has a higher gain setting than this one. So let's go and look at the schematics now and figure out what are the differences. I found these schematics on the Electric Druid website. So we've got a tube screamer and we've got a SD-1. So first of all, let's look at the low frequency. It's usually defined by the capacitors on the input. So here we've got a 220 nanofarad just before, a 20 nanofarad just before the buffer, and then a 1 microfarad here. So this 1 microfarad will actually pass a lot of bass. Now if we go down to the SD-1, 47 nanofarads, almost a 20 nanofarads. But the big difference here is this 18 nanofarad. So this is going to not pass a lot of bass. So this one is more optimized for passing high frequencies rather than low frequencies. So let's remember that. Let's go on to the gain section next, the drive section. Let's look at these ratios here. So when this pot, which is the gain pot, is set to 0, the gain of the tube screamer is essentially 5, so that's 4.7, so I just rounded up to 5, divided into 50, which makes 10. So this has got a nominal gain of 10. And then if we go down here, look at this guy, and this is 5 again, and then this is 33. So let's just make it 30-ish. And so 5 into 30 goes 6 times. So, and just seeing that's 4.7, that's 33. Let's say it's 7. So again, with the pot turned down is 10 versus 7. The tube screamer will be a little louder. And then when the pot is turned up, we have a 1 meg. So that's 1,000,000 ohms. So 1,000,000 ohms divided by 5,000 is 200. And then if we scroll up here, we have 500 ohms divided by 5, so that's 100. The other circuit, the SD-1 circuit, has a lot more gain, but that gain is pointless though, because if you think about a guitar signal, say a single coil is about 300 millivolts, you multiply that by 10, which is the base gain of this, that's 3 volts. But already these guys are going to want to kick in because these are activated by if the sine wave, if the signal exceeds plus 0.7 volts, then either this one or this one will kick in, and then if it exceeds minus 0.7 volts, then either this one or this one will kick in. So we're going to be limited essentially to something like 1.4 volts output. So when you turn this guy up, all that's going to really happen on both the pedals is we're going to drive these guys a lot harder, and we'll have to make up for it with some filtering like this 51 picofarad, or in this on the other one put 100 picofarad in, get out some of the high frequencies which are caused by really driving these to switch on and off really rapidly, and that's what it means to turn up the gain. And then of course we've got more filtering down the line here, and if we look at the tone stack, this really controls the high frequencies. On the tube screamer we've got 220 nanofarads and 220 ohms, and then if we go down to our tube screamer, our SD-1, we've got 2K2 instead of 220 and 1 nanofarad. That filter is going to have a slight different response, and that's a good mod to do because you can do that on any tube screamer because you don't have to unsolder any surface mount components. You can just have a switch that flicks it between the tube screamer circuit and the SD-1 circuit. So I think I'd like to probably do that mod on my SD-1 and make that into a tone stack. There's one caveat, of course, that here we have a 10K resistor, which is also a function of the gain. And then if we go up to here, it's a 1K. Just changing the tone stack out might make it similar, but not exactly. But we'll see. We'll do it and then measure it and see what happens. Now let's plug it into the scope. let's talk about everything that we've just done here in theory and see it in real life. I've got the pedals now hooked up to the signal generator and an oscilloscope. We're putting out 1 kilohertz, so that's a mid-frequency of a guitar, and the amplitude is 300 millivolts peak to peak, which is about a single coil voltage. On both the pedals, I've set the output voltage to max, I've set the gain to 0, and I've set the tone to about halfway. So now let's engage the SD-1, and so we see some gain, which is good, but we don't see a change in the sine wave. Now this is a lower gain unit, but it has also asymmetrical clipping. So one way we can go up to 1.4 volts, and in the other direction of the sine wave, the lower direction, 0.7, so we'll get a higher swing, but it will clip more asymmetrically than the other one. So if we go to the Tube Screamer now, which has a higher gain as well, so if we remember, I think the gain of the SD-1 was something like 5 to 7, and then the gain of this guy with it down was 10. So we plug this guy in and boom, straight it goes into clipping. And that's for two reasons. One, it's higher gain, plus in one direction it is 0.7 and the other direction is 0.7, where the SD-1 has a direction of the sine wave that goes up to 1.4. So that's interesting. So let's go back to SD-1 now and engage the drive and try and make those diodes clip. So we go over here. And you see, you can see the crest. You can see the whole waveform moving to the right. And that's the distortion. So that goes to a shark fin. If we play with this one, there you go. You can probably, there's a shark fin more prominent. So you turn the gain down, get to a sine wave-ish. So that's nice and clean. Crank it up, you go to a shark fin, which represents distortion. Now if we go over to the other guy, it's already trending towards a shark fin. And so if we turn up the gain, you see it kind of triangles out. Put this guy in a bit more. So it really drives the diodes really hard. And what we're seeing actually with the shark fin is filtering afterwards, taking away some of the edges. It's an integrated function. Now let's look at the frequency response. So I'll just leave this pedal plugged in and reduce the frequency. The amplitude gets lower. And then increasing it, the amplitude also gets lower. So these are peaked at the kilohertz. So that's a kilohertz there. That's 900, and it gets smaller as you go further down. But not much on this one because of that very large capacitor on the input. So now let's switch over to this guy and reduce the frequency. See some roll off. Get back up, peak it up to a kilohertz. That's a kilohertz, and then as it goes higher in frequency, you see the frequency goes down again. So both these pedals are peaked at a kilohertz or somewhere around there, and we'll find out when we do a frequency response test. But they have differing lower frequency responses, and that's probably because of that capacitor on the input that we looked at earlier. Right, and now I'm going to hook these up to our frequency response measurement setup and take a look at how they actually differ. Got the pedals hooked up to the frequency analysis software, same settings, so we'll put this on max, so tones are both on max. We'll have the output on max, so we're not getting the potentiometers. So the potentiometers are ineffective essentially, and the same with the drives when we reduce them to 0. So it's just the base gain of the system. So let's do two frequency responses, one on this one and one on this one, and do a comparison. Here are the curves. So the top curve here, this is the Tube Screamer, and then this is the SD-1. On the settings that we've got, looks like the Tube Screamer is putting out a bit more voltage. They both seem to be peaked in the same area with that setting, but you can see the roll-off of the tube screamer with that bigger capacitor that we looked at earlier is not as large as the roll-off of the SD-1. It seems to be, you know, if you look at from peak to say 80 Hertz, which is your E string, looks to be about the same attenuation, maybe a bit more from peak here. Yeah, from the attenuation at 80 Hertz, which is your low E string, is more on the SD-1. So the tube screamer passes a bit more bass. So that's the difference, and we know what capacitor to change if we want to change that. But we're going to focus on some of the higher frequency stuff because that's quite an easy mod, and I'd like to do that today. So why don't we now change the tone and put it in the mid position of both pedals and see what the frequency response looks like. I've now measured it with the tone set halfway, and you can see the blue and green are tracking, and the frequency response is tracking with both pedals. Although it seems that with the tube screamer, that when you move the frequency backwards, we've lost some signal. In fact, we've lost some signal with both of them. And these were the earlier measurements, so we're quite a few dBs down. So the amplifier that has the tone stack attached to it actually doesn't have as much gain the lower you go down in frequency. So this is really optimized to turn up the actual physical volume as you move this peak towards the right hand side, or towards being peaked more at 1 kilohertz, which is this line here. That's very interesting. Let's do another 2 measurements now and see what it's like with the tone set to minimum. Again, consistent with what we saw in the last 2 plots, that we've moved the peak lower, so it's going to sound more muffled. But even to make it worse, it's muffled and it's quieter. Both of these now are a much lower amplitude than their predecessors from the previous set of measurements. So this is this one, and this is this one. Very interesting. So what I think I want to do now is mess with that tone stack a little bit. It's an easy mod to do on the Super Overdrive. It doesn't even matter if it's surface mount or if it's a through-hole older pedal. This mod's really easy to do because we don't have to mess around with any surface mount technology and have any fancy soldering skills. So let's do that mod now and then look at the frequency response. We have 3 plots on the screen, so let me light up this one. So that is the tube screamer. Both the tone pots are set at about 60%. This is the SD-1, same setting, and you can see its center frequency. It's peaked a little further, more than 1 kilohertz, a standard Super Overdrive. And then this is the mod. And the mod looks great, actually. I've got more output amplitude. It's similar in its shape now to the tube screamer. You see it's like got a flat top, but with a little peak. The frequency response at the end, though, is a little higher. It's not as attenuated, so we could play with some more caps. But for now, I think I like what we've done here. And I'm going to plug the guitar in and just do a quick tone test. I've got the pedals plugged in now. Clean sound. So let's put in the tube screamer. Compare that now to the Super Overdrive. So this has more bass, and we know that C2 is much bigger, so it's letting in a lot more bass. It's a microfarad in here. So when I play this one, that's the E chord. On the tube screamer, you can hear more of the actual E frequency. But on this one, the E frequency is attenuated, and I'm hearing more of the A string, or the B note, and the higher E note. Which is quite good. But now we've adjusted our filter in here as well, and the filter, this knob here, that is a low pass filter. So let's play around with D. Now I'll put the mod in, the new filter. In terms of its frequency response, it's a bit more like this, but with higher amplitude. But it's not a fair comparison because this one's got lower bass. So you can hear there's a lower end to this one than this one, but the highs feel similar. Let's push it back to the old version, the stock version. Yeah, there's a big difference between those two. Put it back to here. This is the modified. Yeah, if I just imagined that the bass wasn't there, just by playing the high strings. It's almost there. I feel good. So that is a very easy mod. That's a very easy mod to do on any type of Boss pedal, whether it's a new one that's made in Taiwan that's surface mount, or an old one that you pick up used that's still got the through holes. It's a mod that anybody can do, and it's a great starter mod if you want to start playing around with your pedals. And don't forget, you can change the capacitor value. I put in a 200 nanofarad cap and a 220 ohms resistor on this one, but there's no reason why you can't play with bigger values of caps or smaller values of caps, or change that resistor and actually tune this up to the way you like it. So please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.